Okay, so good morning to everyone. Yeah, so let's begin today's lecture. So regarding the last test, right? So we'll discuss the solutions of the last test sometime later. Okay, we won't discuss it today. Maybe sometime this week. Okay, so in the last lecture we had completed before the test. We had completed this topic of closure properties of regular languages. So in this lecture, we are going to begin with decision properties of regular languages. So just to quickly revise, right? So closure properties. So here we are talking about properties of language classes. So we consider the class of all possible regular languages, right? And a closure property was a property of the form that if you are given some regular languages and if you perform some operation, then is the resulting language still regular? Okay? And we saw that regular languages are indeed closed under several properties or under several operators, such as union, concatenation, asterate, intersection, homomorphism, and so on. Okay. So let's look at now let's look at decision properties of regular languages. Right. So here we will again take the class of regular languages, which means we will consider properties of all possible regular languages. Okay. So what's a decision property? So it is a decision property for a class of languages. So this is in general for any class of languages, not just regular languages. Is an algorithm that takes a formal description of a language and tells whether or not some property holds. So, so this definition is very general, right? So it's saying that okay, a decision property is going to be an algorithm, right? So, and this algorithm is going to take the language. So it will take the language in any of its forms, right? So it could either be a DFA. In the case of regular language, it could either be a DFA or it could be a regular expression. It could be an NFA or anything, right? So it takes this formal description of the language and then it simply tells whether or not some property holds. So Vineet is asking, is anyone able to hear? Okay, so uh, yeah, I think that okay. Yeah, I can see that I am not unmuted, so I hope everyone should be able to hear me. Right. Um, so as I was saying, right. So a decision property. Yeah. So a decision property is something that's a property of the language itself, right? So it's not like we're applying an operator or anything. That's which we are asking. Okay, you are given this description of the language, and does some property hold for this language, right? And this is an algorithm. So it takes any language as its input, right? And then it asks whether or not some property holds. So what's an example of a property? So a simple property is that is the language L empty or not? So if you're given, for example, a DFA, right, or a regular expression, right, corresponding to a regular language, and you want to ask whether or not, or you want to find out whether or not this language is empty, which means that does it have any strings inside it or not. Right? So this is an example of a decision property. Right? So an algorithm for this decision property would basically take as input the language L, right, in any of its formal forms. And basically give us output whether or not the language is empty or not. So let's look at why decision properties are useful. Uh, so we also motivated why closure properties were useful, but let's see why decision properties would be useful, right? So there are practical applications of decision properties, right? So in particular, right, I think in the very first lecture of the course, right, I said that protocols, right, can be expressed as finite automata, and even programs, right, finite state programs can also be expressed as finite automata. So now properties of these protocols or finite state programs, right, useful properties of these protocols or finite state programs can be expressed as decision properties of the underlying finite automata. So important properties of the program are then directly related to the decision properties of the automata. So one example is that if you are expressing a protocol as a finite state program, right, then you might want to know whether or not the protocol ever terminates. Right? So that would be the same as asking the question that is the language of the finite automaton corresponding to the protocol finite or not. Another example would be if you express any finite state program, right, in the form of an automaton, then you might want to ask that you might want to verify the program, right? So you might want to ask, okay, does this program always execute correctly? So does this program actually give an error during any of its executions? So this is the right? So this process is also called verification of programs, and asking this question, right, is the same as asking the decision property, that is the language corresponding to the automaton of the program empty or not. So generally, right, we would express this error as an error state in the finite automaton corresponding to the program, and then so this error state would be a final state, and therefore, if this error state is reachable, right, then the language would actually be non-empty. So if the language is empty, then the error state won't be reachable, and therefore the program will be correct. That won't give any error. So in this way, right, useful properties of the program or the protocol can be expressed as decision properties of the automaton, and that's why it's useful to come up with algorithms in order to decide, right, some of these properties. So beyond practical applications, there are also theoretical applications of decision properties. So we might want to, for example, find the smallest representation for a language. So some of you have also had this question before, right? That how do you find the minimum state DFA for a given language? So we know that there could be multiple DFAs which accept the same language, and we might want to find out the DFA with the smallest number of states, right, or the least number of states, or we might want to find the shortest regular expression. So again, given a regular language, there could be many regular expressions which describe the same language, and we might want to find the shortest regular expression. So all of this questions of minimization, right, are directly related to decision property. So this decision property is that are two languages the same or not. Right? So for example, if you're given two DFAs, right? Okay, Hariharan is asking that he couldn't understand the correlation between error state and non-empty language. Right. So the correlation is that so whenever you want to express a program, so let's say you express the program as an automaton, right? So you so an automaton corresponds to a program, right? So now the program giving an error, right, would correspond to an error state in the automaton, right? So this would be a special state in the automaton, which we'll call the error state. Okay? So now if this error state is reachable, right, then that would mean that there is an execution of the program where the program actually gives an error, right? And we would make this error state as a final state. Right? So if you make the error state as a final state, that means that if the error state is reachable, then this means that this final state is also reachable, which means that there exists a string in the language right, corresponding to that automaton. On the other hand, if the error state is not reachable, right, so we would make just the error state as the final state. So if the error state is not reachable, then the final state is also not reachable, in which case the language is empty, right? Because there cannot be any string, right? So if there is a string in the language, then that means that there's a path, right, from the start state to the final state, which means that the error state would actually be reachable during some execution. So this is how we would generally model programs, right? So whenever we model programs as automaton, then we'll make sure, right, that this automaton has this property that only the error states are the final states of the automaton, so that the verification problem can be reduced to this emptiness problem, this language emptiness problem. Okay, Sanchit is asking, can I have an error-free program? Yeah, I mean, you can definitely have an error-free program. So that's the goal. So the goal of verification is that you want to know, right, whether or not a program is correct, which means that you want to find out whether or not there is any execution of the program that can give an error. So so if you have an error-free program, then the final state or the error state will not be reachable in that program. I hope I have understood this question. So maybe you can clarify a bit more. Okay. Okay, so are there any more questions? Okay, good. Okay, so the second reason why we're interested in decision properties is because we may want to find out the smallest DFA or the smallest regular expression, which is the same as asking this decision property or asking this question that are these two languages the same. Right? So if you're given two DFAs, right, then we must have some algorithm, right, which can decide that these two DFAs actually express the define the same language. In which case, we can then sort of consider the question, okay, how do we find the minimum DFA, which would also accept the same language? So unless and until we can find an answer to this decision property, right, we won't be able to find the smallest DFA which would accept the language. Okay. So these are some of the reasons why we might be interested in decision properties, or why we might be interested in developing algorithms to solve these decision properties. Okay, so let's start with various decision properties, right? So let's first consider one of the simplest decision property, which is this membership question. So our first decision property is this question that if you're given some arbitrary regular language L, right, and some string W, then is the string inside the regular language L, right? So you're given the regular language L in any of its forms, and you're given this arbitrary string W, and we want an algorithm, right, which given this two can always decide, right, can basically give the answer to this question, right? That is the string W going to be in the regular language L or not? Okay. So how would we? So what would be an algorithm which can do this? So we are given two inputs, right? We are given this string W, and we are given a language L, which is a regular language. Uh, then how would we actually decide that whether or not the string is in the language or not? Okay. Aniruddha is saying through regular expression. No, so I'm talking about an algorithm, right? So Vineet is saying definition of the language. Uh, so as I said, right, so you're given some formal description of the language, right? So it could either be a regular expression or it could be a finite state automaton, right? It could be a DFA, NFA, or epsilon NFA. Okay. So Madhula J. Kamal is saying construct an automaton with L and then verify the string. Okay, I'm not sure what verifying the string means. Okay, Vinith is saying recursively finding next state. Right. Okay. So I think the general gist of what Vinith is saying, right, is that you, and what Madhula Jay Kamal was also saying, right, is that you can, so you basically have this DFA, right? Let's say you're given the DFA. Yeah. Right? And then you simply sort of run the DFA, right, on the string, right? So which means that you basically take every symbol of the string, right, and you basically use the transition function of the DFA so you begin from the start state of the DFA, right, and then you execute, right, or you sort of follow the transition function of the DFA for every symbol that's present in the string W in sequence, right? And then so this is this is an algorithm, right? So because so we know that the string is of finite length, and we also know that the regular length that the description of the DFA is finite, right? So there are only a finite number of states and finite number of transitions. So this means that we can actually do this in a finite amount of time, right? And at the end, right, we may end up in some state. So if that state is final, then the string is in the language. If that state is not final, then the string is not in the language. So yeah, so that's how we can do this, right? So if you assume that this L is represented by a DFA A, right, then we simply basically run the DFA, right? So we simulate the action of A on the sequence of input symbols forming W. Okay. And so what happens if the regular language is not represented by a DFA? Right? So an algorithm, right, is deterministic, right? So we must have a DFA. However, if we have some other description of the regular language, right? So if we have an RE, an epsilon NFA, or an NFA, then we know that there is the circle of conversion, right, from one form to another. In particular, if you're given an RE or an epsilon NFA or an NFA, right, so then you can sort of get a DFA corresponding to the same language, right? So we have seen an algorithmic procedure, right, for doing all of this as well, right? So given a regular language, right, for example, you can construct the epsilon NFA. So this was by induction, right? This was by structural induction on the structure of the epsilon, on the structure of the regular expression. And given an epsilon NFA, we can then remove those epsilon transitions, right, and get an NFA. So this was by basically combining these epsilon transitions with previous transitions. And then from NFA, we can get a DFA by the subset construction. So in this way, right, if you're given any other, so notice that all of these, right, are basically algorithmic, right, in the sense that these are like finite procedures, right, with a sequence of steps that you can run, right, and so that if you are given a regular language in any of these other forms, right, you can convert it to a DFA, and then once you have a DFA, you can then do the same procedure, right? You can basically simulate the actions of the DFA on the string. And in that way, right, you can know whether or not the string belongs to the regular language. Okay, when it's asking that can't we write an algorithm for other ways of expressing a regular language other than DFA? Okay, okay, that's a good question, right? So, well, you can do it, right? I mean, there's nothing to stop you from doing it, but yeah, I mean, it's this. So this is just one way, right? In which this is just one algorithm. Uh, so that if you're given some description of the regular language, right, I simply convert it to a DFA and then run the DFA, right? But you may have another algorithm which also does the same thing, right, but which doesn't convert to a DFA. So maybe you have an algorithm which takes a regular expression, right, and directly uses some property of the regular expression to find out. So that's also possible, but so I'm just giving one algorithm, right? There may be other algorithms, but that's fine, right? So yeah. Okay. Okay, so we have an algorithm for this decision property, right? The membership question that given a string and a regular language, does the string belong to the regular language? Okay, so let's look at this emptiness problem now. So here, right, so the emptiness problem asks this question that if you are given a regular language, right, then does the language contain any string at all? So right, so this means that, so this also includes the empty string, right? So if you're given some description of the regular language, then is there any string, right, which is in the language, right? So I mean, of course, one way to do this, right, would be that if you're given this DFA, right, then you can simply run the DFA on all possible strings, right? Uh, but that's not a procedure, right? Because so that's not an algorithm, because there are an infinite number of strings and you can't run the DFA on an infinite number of strings, right? So we need a finite step procedure. We need a procedure that can terminate in a finite number of steps in order to find out whether or not the language has any string or not. So how would you do this? Any suggestions? Okay, Hariharan is saying backtrack in the DFA from F to S. Okay, I'm assuming that backtrack means that, okay, Aniruddha is saying find the path from start state to end state. Okay, but what's an algorithm? So I want an algorithm. Okay, Vinith is saying initially start is reachable and then all states we can reach from start are marked reachable and then the same thing is repeated. Okay, right. So we are getting close, okay. Yeah, so cost of design, we can perform a DFS from the start state, right? So that's exactly it, right? So let's say that you're given for the DFA of the language. If you're given any other description, you can always get a DFA, right? So once you get a DFA or even an NFA or epsilon NFA is fine. Right? So you then use the graph representation of this particular finite state automaton. And then you perform any of this search techniques, right? So you can use either breadth first search or depth first search or anything. So if you then perform this breadth first search or depth first search beginning from the start state, so this we know that this breadth first search and depth first search are finite algorithms. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was having some network issues, so I've rejoined again. Okay, so yeah, sorry about that. So let's continue, right? So we're discussing this language emptiness problem, right? And a number of you suggested to use some sort of depth first search or breadth first search, right? So basically, we want to find out, right, whether or not the final state is reachable from the start state. Right? So therefore, we do some sort of search, right? Beginning. So this is basically a search in the graph corresponding to the DFA, beginning from the start state, and then right. So we find out all the nodes, right? All the states that are reachable from the start states, and if any of the final states are reachable, right? Then this means that there is a path from the start state to the final state, and the labels of the strings on those on that path, right, or the labels of the edges on that path would correspond to the string, would correspond to a string that's present in the language. And that's how we can know whether or not the language is empty or not. Okay? So if the final state is reachable from the start state, then the language is not empty. But if the final state are not reachable from the start state, then the language is empty. So that's the simple procedure. So yeah, so we basically assume. So let's assume that the representation is DFA. Then we construct this graph, and then we compute the set of states that are reachable from the start states. And if any final state is reachable, then basically the language is not empty. Right? So here yes means it's not empty, which means that it actually contains a string. Right? And no means it doesn't contain any string, which means that the language is actually empty. So if none of the final states are reachable, then the language is empty. Okay, so that was straightforward. So now let's consider a slightly more tricky decision property, right, which is this infiniteness problem. So here, the question that we are asking is whether or not a given regular language infinite. So we know that regular languages can be infinite, right? So in fact, like this, so the various representations that we have seen, like PFA or NFA, or regular expressions, right? So these are all finite representations. However, the language that they represent itself may be infinite, right? So like we considered this language is like having like the strings with even length or odd length, right? Beginning with 0, ending with 1, and so on. It's all of these are infinite languages. That there are an infinite number of strings which are present in the language. Right? So now the question that we are asking is, okay, if you are given some representation of a regular language, then does the language have an infinite number of strings? Right? So how would we do this? Right? So are there any suggestions for this? So we need an algorithm, right? So once again, right? I mean, in principle, we could simply check everything. Okay. So couple of suggestions. So Sanchit and Vinit are saying that the graph is cyclic. Kaustav is also saying the same thing. But okay, so Kaustav is saying something different, right? So there should be a cycle that's reachable from the start state and a final state that's reachable from the start state. Okay. Abhendu Saha, I think, is saying what is the correct answer, right? So this is check for closed loops in the path between S and F. So in general, right, if the graph is a cycle, then that doesn't mean that the language would be infinite. Right? So here we're talking about the graph of the DFA. Right? So if the graph of the DFA has a cycle, right, then the cycle might actually not be reachable from the start state, or it might not be on the path from the start state to the final state, right? So which means that we actually need to check for all possible cycles on the path, on all paths, right? So we need to check for cycles on all paths from the start state to the final state. Uh, and this is how we can solve this problem, right? So that's correct, right? But let's actually look at another way, right? So we will actually come back to this algorithm which uses cycle detection, right? But before coming to that algorithm, right, let's also look at another way to solve this infiniteness problem. Right? So okay, so let's start with the DFA for the language. Now here's the idea, right? So if the DFA has n states, right, then we find out whether or not the language contains any string of length n or more. So if the language does contain any string of length n or more, then the language is guaranteed to be infinite. Otherwise, it would be finite. So, so if the language doesn't contain strings, right, of length n or more, that would mean that all the strings in the language, right, are of length less than or equal to n minus 1, right? But there are only a finite number of such strings, and therefore the language is definitely finite, right? So if the language doesn't contain any string uh, of length n or more, then we know that the language is surely finite. However, if the language contains even one string of length n or more, then the language is going to be infinite, which means that there would be an infinite number of strings present in the language. So why would that be the case? Okay, yeah. So the pigeonhole principle, yeah. So that's correct, right? Right. So the idea is that so if you have if you have an n state DFA, right? And if so, what happens if you have a string of length n or more, right? So let's actually consider this. Right? So you will begin from the start state, okay, uh, and then uh, and then you have a string of length n or more, right? So you have this a1 and then a2 dot 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 up to a final state a. Okay. So how many states are present, right, on this path? So if you have if you have a string of length n or more, right, that's accepted by this language, then or that is in the language, then that would mean that in the DFA there is a path whose label is a1 up to an, which begins from the start state and it ends in one of the final states, right? But if you notice, right, so there are actually n plus 1 states here. So on this path, there are n plus 1 states. So in particular, right, so if you just have a string of length 1, then there are going to be 2 states. If you have a string of length 2, then there are going to be 3 states and so on. So you can prove inductively, right, that if you have a string of length n, then the path, right, of that string in the DFA would necessarily have n plus 1 states. So if there are n plus 1 states, right, but we know that the total number of states in the DFA are just n. So by the pigeonhole principle, that means that there must be 2 states, right? There must be a state which occurs more than once on this path. So so let's say that this state, right, is the same as this state, right? So we'll say that this is Qi and this is also Qi. So this state occurs twice on the path, right? So now, right, what we can do is that we can sort of repeat this again and again. Right? So there is essentially a cycle on this path itself, right? Uh, and therefore we can and therefore this intermediate string, right, which is on the path from Qi to Qi, it can basically occur any number of times, right? And that would also be a string in the language because that would also be a path from the start state to the final state. So that's how the language is actually going to be infinite. Okay. So let's just summarize this. So if you have an n-state DFA, right, and it accepts a string of length n or more, then there must be a state that occurs twice on the path labeled W from the start state to a final state, because there are at least n plus 1 states around this path. So this is what I just said, right? So you have this state. So this is the state Qi, right, that was repeating. Uh, so x is the string that takes you from the start state to Qi, and then this y, right, is the string that takes from Qi to itself, which is the cycle, and then the z is the string which takes from Qi to the final state. Okay? So now w is equal to xyz, where xyz belongs to the language, right? But that would mean that you can basically take this path any number of times, right, from y to y. So that would mean that x y to the power I z, where I is greater than or equal to 0, also belongs to the language. So there are infinite number of such strings that would be in the language, right? And that's how and that's why the language is also going to be infinite. So x y to the power I and z is going to be the language for all I greater than or equal to 0. So okay, so we have this property, right, that if the DFA has n states and if the language contains any string of length greater than or equal to n, then then the language is definitely infinite. But we don't have an algorithm. So we do not yet have an algorithm because there are an infinite number of strings, right, of length greater than or equal to n. So we can't check for every string, right, of length greater than or equal to n, whether or not it's accepted or whether or not it is present in the language. So there are an infinite number of such strings, and therefore we can't test them out, right? So we need an algorithm, right, which means we need something that can that's guaranteed to terminate in a finite number of steps, right? And that would actually give us the answer. Right? So how can we do this? So do we actually need to check for an infinite number of strings of length greater than n or not? So any suggestions for this? Okay, so the question is that, so we know that if there is a string whose length is greater than or equal to n, and that's present in the language, then the language is definitely infinite, but we can't check for all of them, right? So there are a bounded number of such strings, right? That would be sufficient for us to check, so that if any of those strings are in the language, uh, then the language is going to be infinite. So we can basically apply this reasoning. Okay, so Costa is saying check for all strings of length n. Okay, is that correct? So it's possible that the language, the DFA may not accept any string of length n. It may accept a string of length n plus 1. Is that possible? Yeah. Okay. So that is definitely possible. Okay. So what we will actually do, right, is that we will apply the same reasoning in reverse, right? So we said that okay, so you will have a cycle, right, on the path of on the path for any string of length greater than or equal to n, right? And we said that okay, we can then sort of create larger strings, right? But if you have a larger string, right, then you can also remove the cycle. Yeah. So you can remove the cycle and then you can construct smaller strings, right? So yeah, so what Vineet is saying is actually right. So you only need to check from n to 2n. So if there is a string of length greater than or equal to n in L, then there is definitely going to be a string of length between n and 2n minus 1. I seem to have lost the connection here again. Sorry about that. Yeah, but the slides are not visible, right? Okay. So right. So the second key idea is saying that that if there is a string of length greater than or equal to n in the language, then there is guaranteed to be a string of length between n and 2n minus 1. So which means that we can then check whether or not there is a string in the language uh, between whose length is between n and 2n minus 1. Right? So if there is no such string in the language, then it's guaranteed that the language is going to be finite. But if there is one such string in the language, then the language is guaranteed to be infinite. So let's also prove this idea, that why is it that we only need to check between n and 2n minus 1, right? Or why is it that if there is a string of length greater than or equal to n, then there is also a string of length between n and 2n minus 1. Okay. So let's do this, right? So let's say that I have a string of length which is greater than or equal to n that's present in the language. So so we know that this means that there is a path, right, in the DFA whose label is going to be the string, right? And this path is from the start state to the final state. Okay. So consider a string W of length greater than or equal to n. So let's consider the prefix of the string, right? So let's consider the prefix of length exactly n. So we know that by the pigeonhole principle, right, there must exist repeated state in this prefix itself, right? So this means that this prefix can basically be shortened, right? So what I have represented here, right, in this figure, right, is basically the prefix. So so we're basically restricting ourselves to the prefix of length n, and we know is going to have a cycle in it. And what we will do, right, is that so we'll basically remove the cycle, right, for that prefix, right. So beginning from the start state, right, I might reach some state qi, and then the state qi again. Okay, so this would be y, this would be x. So I can remove this y now, right, because I'm only going from qi to qi. So so now the string can basically be shortened to just x itself. Okay, so we'll remove this y. So in particular, right, since we restricted ourselves to the prefix of length n, right? So that's why the size of this xy, right, can be at most n, right? Because we said that this repetition can only occur, or this repetition of states only occurs within the prefix, right? But the prefixes of length n, therefore, the maximum that we can reduce the string length, right, is by n itself, right? So it's possible that the x may be empty, right? So x may be epsilon, or qi may be the start state itself. Right? In which case, if you remove the string y, right, then you will shorten the string by at most length n. But however, you are definitely guaranteed to shorten the string by at least one, right? Because this is a DFA, right? And therefore this y cannot be epsilon. So right, so that's how this property comes. That y, the length of y can be, so it will be at least one, and it will be at most n. Okay. So now that you have removed this y, right, we have shortened the string. So W can be shortened by at most n. Right? So what happens in the remaining string now? Right? So if the remaining string also has length greater than or equal to n, then you can apply the same procedure, right? So you again consider the prefix of length n, right? And then you repeat the whole process. Right? So if you repeat the whole process, then you will again shorten the length of the string, right? So however, how many times can you sort of repeat this? Right? So at every step we are shortening by at most, right? So for example here, right, if we shorten the string by n, okay. Now if the length of the original string was greater than or equal to 2n, right, then after shortening, right, the length will still be greater than or equal to n. In which case we can then again repeat the procedure, right? So we can keep on doing this until the length becomes less than 2n, right? So if once the length becomes less than 2n, then it's not guaranteed that we may be able to shorten it, right? If the length is greater than or equal to 2n, then it's guaranteed that we will be able to shorten it. So which means that ultimately, right, we will end up with a string whose length is between n and 2n minus 1, or rather whose length is less than 2n minus, less than or equal to 2n minus 1. Right? So after shortening, if the length is still greater than or equal to n, then we repeat the process, and this is guaranteed to happen if the length of the original string was at least 2n. So we keep on doing this until the length is in the range n into n minus 1. Right? So note that this is just a proof, right? So it's not like we are actually going to do this procedure. Uh, but this is just to show, right, that if you have a string of, if you have an arbitrary string of length greater than or equal to n, which is in the language, then you will also have a string whose length is less than or equal to 2n minus 1 that's present in the language. Right? Uh, so that means that we only need to look for strings whose length is between n and 2n minus 1. So if there is any such string, then the language is actually going to be infinite, and if there is not, then the language is finite. And so I hope that the proof is clear to everyone. So are there any questions regarding the proof? Okay, Vinith is asking that can you give a contradiction for the n case? Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that. That a string of length n is not accepted. but n plus 1 is accepted. Okay, I see. So maybe one of you can actually help me, right, to construct this. Okay, Sanchit is saying odd length strings are accepted. Okay, so yeah, so this is an automaton with two states, uh, and it doesn't accept a string of length 2, but it accepts a string of length 3. Yeah, good example. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so then let's continue. So let's just formally complete this infiniteness algorithm, right? So we test for membership. So of all strings of length between n and 2n minus 1. So if any of them are accepted, then the language is infinite, else it is finite. So we already have solved this decision property of membership. Right? So we know that this is a finite algorithm, right? To basically check, this is an algorithm, right? To decide whether or not a string belongs to the language. And there are only a finite number of strings between n and 2n minus 1. But and therefore we can sort of test for membership of all of those strings, right? And if any of them are accepted, then the language is going to be infinite, else it's going to be finite. So what's the complexity of this procedure? So by the way, we haven't actually talked about complexity of any of the procedures, right? So the membership procedure has a complexity. What's the complexity of the membership procedure, right? Which is to check whether or not, given a string, right, whether or not that string belongs to the language. So let's say that the DFA has some number of states, right? Let's say n states. So we express the DFA as a graph, right? So the states become the vertices and the transitions become the edges. Right? So for the membership problem, right? The membership problem would basically be linear, right? In the size of the string. On the other hand, for the emptiness problem, right? You would actually have to perform a DFS or a BFS, right? So that would be polynomial time in the number of vertices and the number of edges. So what about this problem? Right? So how many strings are there of length between n and 2n minus 1? So this depends on what. Okay, so if s is the size of the language, supposed to be saying it's sigma to the power n. Right, so sigma, right, so this mod sigma to the power n are the number of are the total number of strings of length n, right? But we are checking for strings between n and 2n minus 1. So yeah, so this is basically going to be exponential, right? So you would probably add the sigma to the power n plus 1 and so on, right? Sigma to the power 2n minus 1. So these are all the strings that are present in the language. Right? That could be in the language between length n and 2n minus 1. And we would have to check membership for all of them, right? So this is a very poor algorithm, right? So it's a terrible algorithm, and we have a much better algorithm that many of you actually suggested before, right? Which is to find cycles between the start state and the final state, right? So let's also briefly go through this algorithm, right? So we want to find out whether or not there's a cycle on all paths from the start state to the final state. So we do this in 3 steps, right? So what we do, right, is first we find out all the states that are reachable from the start state. So we eliminate all the states that are not reachable from the start state. So for this you would again use either BFS or DFS. Then in the resulting graph, right, we then eliminate states that do not reach a final state. So in other words, for every state, right, we find out whether or not the final state is reachable. And if the final state is not reachable, then we will eliminate that state as well. Okay? So after these two steps, right, we know that every state in the DFA, right, after performing these two steps, is reachable from the start state, and there is also a path from that state to the final state. So which means that we have basically considered all the states that are on paths from the start state to the final state. So now we can search for cycles. So again, you can use either DFS or BFS to also search for cycles. Right? So, so in the remaining transition graph, we find out whether or not it has any cycles, and this procedure, right? So if there are any cycles, then the language is going to be infinite, and if there are no cycles, then the language is going to be finite. And this procedure is much more better, right, in terms of time complexity than the previous procedure, right? Uh, for finding the or for the decision property of infiniteness of a language. Okay. Right. So then why is it that we went through this previous procedure, right? So one of the reasons that we went through this procedure, right, of finding out this strings of length between n and 2n minus 1, right, was to motivate this pumping lemma. Right? So let me just briefly say what the pumping lemma is, and then we will elaborate it in the next lecture. Right? So we have basically proved a statement, right, that is actually very useful in showing that languages are not regular, which is the pumping lemma. Uh, so what we have shown, right, is this property, right, that if you have a string whose length is some greater than or equal to some number, right, then you can sort of generate more strings in the language, right, from that string, which means that if the language is not regular, right, then you won't be able to do this. Right? So in the formal definition, right, of this pumping lemma for regular languages, right, we will say that, okay, if the language is regular, then you can sort of pump more and more strings, right, to be in that language, right? But if the language is not regular, right, then there exists a string uh, which should be present in the language, right, if the language were regular, but which is actually not present. Right? And that's how we are actually going to use the pumping lemma to show that a language is not regular. Okay. Uh, so the formal description of pumping lemma is slightly big, right? And we won't be able to cover it in this lecture. So let's defer it to the next lecture. So yeah, we end the lecture today. Thank you.